Hi, welcome to Senior Strategies. My name is Amy Decker, and I am Director of Client Services with Senior Helpers. Today we have a special guest. It's Dr. George Ackerman, and he has done so much in the research and educating of all of us in the communities on Parkinson's, the challenges of Parkinson's, how it's affected him and his family. He's put together an entire program called Together for Sharon. Sharon was his mother that he was very close to, and she eventually passed of Parkinson's disease. And it made such an impact on his life that he has put together all sorts of information. He just actually had a book that was published. So we're going to talk about that with him shortly. You're going to be really enlightened on what's going on with the Parkinson's Association and all that George has done to just keep our community together. And so we can learn more about that too. So we look forward to sharing that with you. Welcome to Senior Strategies, Tools for the Caregiver with Amy Decker and Shane Silver. Join us on each show where you're going to enjoy a lively conversation that's going to connect you to the tools and resources that you'll need to coordinate care for the seniors in your life. We are so happy that you joined us. Well, welcome to our show. We are so glad to have a special guest with us today. It's Dr. George Ackerman, or Together for Sharon, Sharon's son. And so there's so much about you that is just so special to me. And I know that I met you at a charity event that was to be given monies to the Parkinson's Association. And that's when you just began to tell your story and everything that you do to bring awareness, George, to Parkinson's. And I think your whole life started this way. I know that your mother was a big to-do on why you started this, and she too had Parkinson's. So share a little bit about your mother and the role that she played in your life as a little boy.
First, I want to thank you and your audience and your whole organization. It means the world to speak today. This is not just a conversation that ends really today. It's something that has to really continue until we find a cure. I've been an advocate my whole life. I think it's mainly because I wouldn't be the man I am today if it wasn't for my mother and her sacrifices. So I knew when unfortunately she became ill, I had to step up for her. She passed on 1/1/2020 due to Parkinson. She was only 69. For my world of caregiving, I was brought up in Brooklyn, New York. I'm now in Florida. My mother was a school teacher and had her master's. She actually dropped everything to take care of me and my brother so we would have a good life. So you could see her, sacrifice the type of person she was. She always told me to be kind, generous. My dream and my life goal before caregiving and caretaking was advocacy for family members of homicide victims. So I started my career, I was an intern at the prosecutor's office in Broward County, ended up doing a little bit of defense work. And then I realized that as a prosecutor, you just have so many calls, you don't have the time that you want to for families. So I decided, oddly enough, why not go into the police field? So I went to the Miami Police Academy. After that, I actually was able to see again firsthand, just have so many calls, you can't, help the victim as you wanted. You give a brochure and you have to go. So I got the great opportunity to fall into teaching, and I became a professor, and that's my passion. But I feel that we still learn, no matter how many degrees I have, I still learn every day from everyone. As an officer since 2006, I actually I'm called a reserve, but I'm fully sworn, so you wouldn't see a difference, but I've never gotten a penny to be in policing.
But that shows you're a very compassionate person. You've got a lot of empathy. That's your heart is giant, and that's what's keeping you going. That's awesome.
I try to fight for those who might not have a voice or, again, no, and that kind of correlates to where we are today. A lot of the individuals, unfortunately, in the Parkinson's community I feel are forgotten. Thankfully, for the first time, sure in U.S. history, last December, the United States House of Representatives passed a national plan to end Parkinson's disease, and I was a part of that. It was spearheaded by the Michael J. Fox Foundation.
Wow.
Oddly enough, it's the first time legislation ever passed or even had the word Parkinson's in our history, which is shocking. And I had the honor to interview U.S. Senator Rick Scott a month ago on my show. That was incredible. To to take a minute. Now, we won't get into Marco Rubio. It's not his fault, but his staff was not very helpful
Oh,
towards Parkinson's, which is
mhm.
could. I hope any of your listeners can write a letter to him and let him know this is an important topic. I think a lot of
Right.
people still are just not aware, and that's the problem. Didn't take a course on it. I just fell into being my mother's caregiver, caretaker, and then
How old were
unfortunately,
you when you started to care for your mom?
I only started a lot. She had Parkinson's for 15 years. I only helped the last four. We knew what the word, but
Oh,
she never told us. She was the kind of person that said she didn't want to burden the family. So I
aw.
really didn't heard the word. And she was very independent. She lived alone. She saw a friend. So for 7 years after that, she just had some stiffness in her left arm, but
Oh,
she still could, she could still live, drive. So I
mhm.
heard the word, and 15 medical expert doctors, I'm not a medical doctor, but movement specialists, they said that you don't die of Parkinson's, you die with it. But my mother had no other medical issues ever. So,
Wow.
that's still left for debate today.
Did
And
she end
so
up
we
moving in
never,
with you and your family, or did she stay alone in her home?
she lived in Boca, and she lived there for 20 years. So we bought a home closer to where we are in Boca, and it
Mhm.
was literally across the street, a different community. So it
Oh,
gave me but the minute she walked in there, the last year, she never got to really enjoy it because that's when her
aw.
health declined. And we actually had a plan to sell that one, move her in with us. So we have a bigger house now. But now there's a room that's kind of, my mother-in-law lives in it, but it was my mother's room. So some days, especially Mother's Day, I walk by that part of the house and it's still, heartbreaking. And
I
I'm still
bet.
grieving even
I
4 years
bet.
later in memory of my mother. And it just came out only 2 weeks ago.
So
But
exciting. That's so
yeah,
exciting.
I've written books, but never in this area. And I felt it was important to share her journey. Plus, it also talks, I kept a journal during the last year of her life, which I
Oh,
never
wow.
shared, and it brings you right into the world. And some people, it is tough to hear. It's important not just for people caregiving for Parkinson, but also for any disease.
I think it's great. And I think that most people that are caregivers almost want to be, they almost want to hear somebody else's story. They want to hear that what they're going through, that they're not alone. So if you make it more raw and make it more real and personable, that's going to touch them more to know that they're not alone. They're dealing with the same thing that you did too. And yet you were able to come out on the other end of it and be an advocate now, not only for your mom, but for Parkinson's, and to educate people and to get you on programs like this so that we can all
Yeah.
understand what happened.
Yeah, the one tough thing, even as an advocate, and that's what the first book again, Son's Journey, is dedicated to my mother, but for
Mhm.
those struggling today and their families. But my next one is a little shift to in memory of all those we've lost due to Parkinson's and their families. But I don't have Parkinson's, and I'm no longer a caregiver of someone alive with it. But there's a third category, and that's me and all the people. I mean, imagine if we brought back 30 million people who are still living who used to care for someone with Parkinson's, but we don't
Right.
do that. Obviously, we care mainly on those fighting it and their families, but forgetting about people like me. There was a little council. I was so excited. I got an email from a big organization. So it was like, you can sign up, maybe you'll get on this council. And it was, to me, that was so amazing. Like, I just wanted them to know I'm out there. I didn't expect to get on, put on my PhD hat, typed a 3-page essay, put a lot of like 3 hours into it, went
Wow.
to press went to press submit, and said two choices. A, you're Parkinson's. B, you're a caregiver of someone alive. And guess what? That was it. So it kind of
Oh,
broke my heart. It felt like my mother had died.
oh,
I feel like she passed away a second time. And that's what motivated me to write an entire book in just a week or two. We actually started together for Sharon.com, a section, if you've seen, says in memory, and there's a candle burning. So I love these organizations to have a section or a whole division for people who lost loved ones. I
yeah,
think a lot of it is we have a beginning, a middle, and end of life, and nobody wants to talk or even think about the end of life.
I know.
And that's a big problem because my
Yes.
mother was a godsend. She planned the will. I was a power of attorney. We had the
Wow.
funeral. Everything was done, and that took a weight off, our chests. And
Of
people are just
course.
putting it off, and it can cause major family problems. And it,
Oh, absolutely. It does. It does. And I think what I'm most impressed is now that you are moving forward, not only are you educating just general public and communities and loved ones, but now you're reaching out to, to our legal department and our sheriff and our police department, and that you're trying to to even find out how do they treat somebody differently that has Parkinson's? How do they look at somebody that has Parkinson's when they go in, if there's a situation? And I think that's great that you're doing a whole nother twist to it, because I don't think people put that in their mind that really when you're dealing with someone who has Parkinson's, I know even with dementia, Alzheimer's and Lewy body, it's completely different. It's just completely different. And I love that you're sharing that part of it.
No, I appreciate it. And it's, people like you again who inspire me in your show and also the viewers, because I always say, no matter what tough things are going on in our life, we have to think of those people out there who, the only thing that breaks my heart is the journey I'm not aware of. So when I discover someone like you and your work or somebody that's out there, I mean, I'm interviewing a couple and they both had DBS surgery and they met. They both have Parkinson's. It's a beautiful love story and I
Oh,
can't wait to speak to them. But those are the journeys that inspire me to, no matter how tired I am or if I feel burnt out, that keep me pushing forward.
right. Oh, I think that's wonderful. And you're going to continue to grow with that as you finish, as much as you think as you finish this book, you're going to do another one. You're always going to have something that's going to touch your heart and that you're going to share with somebody else. And I think that's wonderful. And I think the event that you just had that was promoting your new book. Now, if somebody wanted to get this book, where would they find it?
If you go to togetherforsharon.com and click book, you'll find it. It goes right to the link. And we actually started something else. We have another link at the different area in books. And I've actually gotten about 30 authors around the country, and I have their link to their book and their everything, Amazon, their contact. So, because
Wow.
I think we're all family and we don't accept a penny. As you know, togetherforsharon.com was developed to remember my mother. I felt like 4 people would see it and I would have been happy, but we've had, if there's a counter, it says over 35,000 people have visited the site, so it means the
Wow.
world. And we haven't accepted a penny since we started.
And I know one of the things that you mentioned, because I was looking at the event that you had, and when you were talking there, is I never want anyone to have to pay for their medication again. I
So
love
that's
even
a
if they're dealing with it. And I know there's certain things you can do. So if somebody can't afford it, I think they can call the pharmacy and let them know, or the specific medication. Sometimes they give you a break on that, but you're right. Somebody that's got Parkinson's and the medication is so important, especially having it at the same time every day to keep from different things happening. But what a wonderful way to look at that. Like, wow, I would love for no one to ever have to pay for that medication again.
My dream is to have, we already have, it's under partnerships and people with Parkinson's. That's what PWP is.
Mm-hmm.
And my newest idea, which is kind of up there, I ask for people out there, if you're listening, if you have Parkinson's and you unfortunately have lost your career because it's a crippling disease after
Right.
certain stages, please send me your website. If you sell, I have a gentleman sells shirts that say Parkinson's. I have an artist. I have a person who makes mugs for Parkinson's. And
Mm-hmm.
so I put their 2 sentences about what they do, their name, their contact, and their website. So you can actually go to them, order things from them, help pay for their medications. And we have nothing to do with it. Like, we don't take a penny because,
Wow.
again, I don't want to say much bad about the big organizations, but in reality, in my brain, at least, I mean, we have to think about or come to grips. How many of the regular people, the little guy and girl, are getting, funding for their own medicines from these big organizations? I don't think they are.
Right.
Obviously, the big organizations are great and they're trying to invent a cure. So
Mm-hmm.
eventually it'll affect them. But someone down in South Florida, I don't know if they're benefiting, directly. So now there's a chance someone completely free. I don't accept money. They
Mm-hmm.
can put their website or their trade, art, poetry, and they can sell it, for free.
Oh, that's great.
That's
That's
my big.
awesome. And then, so how much is your personal family involved in this? Do you get them involved in a lot of it, or you're so much into it that everyone kind of does their own thing? How does that work?
My wife says I'm at a speed that no one can keep up with. So I'm also, I teach. I'm a professor. I work 24/7 on that. I'm also a
Oh,
lawyer, and a cop. So I don't have a lot of time, but I'm able to manage it. The problem is, and I break this. The number one rule is you're better aware. I'm sure, well aware. You're supposed to take care of yourself first as a caregiver
right,
before your loved one or your no
right.
use. So I broke that down, and I'm breaking it as an advocate because, like I said, let's say we didn't meet today, something happened, or someone's sick. I feel like we would have missed an opportunity. If we even reached just one person
I
today,
know.
we've changed the world. So I'm not going to stop. And then back on caregiving, my mother was, I can go back a little, but Parkinson's is obviously, but if someone's not aware, it's a movement disorder. So it's
Mhm.
almost like your brain is saying, walk to the door, but your body won't allow it.
Mhm.
She had internal tremors. Mr. Michael J. Fox, the famous actor, has external. I was with him a few weeks ago, and
Oh,
it's just
wow.
kind of shocking because he's not doing well. And it's at the same time,
Oh,
it's incredible. It's also heartbreaking. And
yeah.
they've been a hero of mine because he could have kind of went away and led a quiet life. He fought back. He's raised over 2 billion, not million, $2 billion, but he's not doing well. So it kind of says what this disease does. So my mother had that. She had dyskinesia and
Mhm.
dystonia, which is the curling of the toes. And I noticed towards the end with a lot of the, when it was like the last 4 years just went down, down, down with the voice. And I'm not happy with Florida. We don't have death with dignity in Florida. We treat our animals better than our loved one.
I
So for
100% agree with you on that. It's so sad.
the last 7 days of her life, she had a heartbeat, but didn't, that's it, nothing else, no ability to move. So
Did she
that
go on
was
hospice?
Yeah, and we actually got lucky because it's a group which I won't name again that did
Mhm.
a year long-term hospice, which is a new program they never had. But Florida doesn't also, or yeah, Florida and their organization doesn't consider Parkinson's as end of life, which it was. So these are the little technicalities that need to be worked out. Because if
Yeah.
someone that didn't have long-term health insurance because we weren't told that you can die from Parkinson's, and it's a misnomer, a lot of misnomers or misinformation on Parkinson's. It's not an elderly man disease anymore. People can get it young. Michael J. Fox had in his 30s. We're
Mhm.
trying to do more research, or I'm looking at with women in Parkinson's, which has been neglected. Also, the African American population. And that's what the national plan, which hopefully heads to the Senate this year or next. So if any of your listeners are from out of Florida or even Florida, please urge your senators to support this bill. It's a bipartisan thing, and that's the great thing because everyone today doesn't want to agree. It's crazy what's happening in the world, but this is something that everyone should want an end to, cure and to end Parkinson's.
I agree. I agree. And I think like you had mentioned before, um and we've used this phrase so many times, you can't pour from an empty cup. So as much as you are, at the time you were a caregiver for your mom, now you've got a family, now you're putting books together, you're trying to advocate for other, organizations, but you have to keep in mind that you too have to worry about yourself and care for yourself as a caregiver. And I think of it every time I take a trip somewhere when they say, if something happens and the oxygen masks drop down, always put yours on first before you help somebody else, because you're no good to anybody else if you're not healthy and breathing and thriving on your own. So you've got to take time for yourself, as much as this is such a drive for you, and I get it. But you're the perfect example of a caregiver that just wants to give, give, give. And I think your big giant heart is what I love most about you. But you have to make sure you take care of yourself too, that you're watching, that you are doing what's right for you, because that's most important still for you to be a dad and a husband and an advocate. And your mom would be so proud of you as well, just watching you run, 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 trying to get all these answers together. And it's all because of her. She's beaming.
And my mother would say, "Don't waste your time. Just spend it with the family." She was funny like that. She didn't want to be a burden. But
Yeah.
one thing is the reason I did, I don't listen now and back then, is that my mother had late onset dementia on top of the Parkinson's, and that
Oh
brought
boy.
delusions and hallucinations, and that was even worse some days than the Parkinson because she was in a lot of fear for her safety.
Hmm.
Actually, not to tell the whole story because it's pretty long, it's in the book. But my mother had Parkinson's for several years. She had it for 15 total. We tried 15 different experts, and no one really could help besides prescribing, drugs and things,
Hmm.
which wasn't a cure. So we decided, or they did, they were divorced, but my father's a medical doctor, and they brought her to a university, which I don't name. And unfortunately, I think they changed her medication too drastically, and she got home the same night. I was called at 4 a.m. to rush over to her home. I didn't know what to expect or what was going on because this never happened before.
Hmm.
But she went into some kind of a shock, and she was moving her furniture out of her home. She said she thought she was in fear of Nazis inside the house going to
Oh
harm
my
her. I
goodness.
rushed her to the hospital, and they said we saved her life, but that was when the last 4 years just down. So the thing is, when I was with her, she was still sick, but she felt safe. And that's what my heart was trying to do.
Aw.
And we had to hire, and there's a whole chapter, we hired and fired several companies,
Hmm.
caregiving, 'cause they call themselves caregivers, but they weren't. So you're taking someone who's an independent woman or man, whatever, and now you're throwing a rotating group of three people in and out of the house. It's frightening. So
Yes.
on top of it, we had to install video cameras because she said they were harming her, which thankfully they weren't. The book is great for me because it's a lot of things that we just won't have the time. There
Hmm.
is one little sentence, if you don't mind, I can read.
Absolutely.
And the most important thing with the book is it takes you inside the really deep, dark, into the good, the bad, and the ugly of a
Mhm.
caregiver. But my mother passed on 1/1/2020. In July, or on July 20, 2019, I wrote, I woke up thinking today might be relaxing. I was hoping for a mental break because I couldn't handle the stress with so much I had to do for mom daily and the time constraints. I love helping her, but I've reached my breaking point. At 10 a.m., mom called and then 5 times during the next hour. She complained that she was being hurt by the AIDS and how horrible life is. I tried to be positive to her, but this was nearly impossible. How many years can this continue? So that's kind of just a little segment. But if you can't remember some of those things because you don't
Yeah.
want to. And the
Right.
book, but the book is also very positive, so I don't want to depress people. But
Hmm.
there's chapters about, first signs, treatments. There's also a lot of how to, like you were saying,
Hmm.
tips to do things to make sure you're prepared or
Hmm.
just to be a better advocate. There's also a chapter my wife wrote, which is amazing because it takes the female side of caregiving. And then it goes about the aftermath her last year. And some of the best chapters are moving forward in the path of advocacy. And then there's actually a chapter of all her friends who wrote a little bit about my mother and when they found out she had Parkinson. And finally, it's called Grateful, and how grateful I am to people like you and your audience because you really have opened your arms.
Like you said, you kept a ledger while you were caring for her. I think that's a healthy thing to do for anybody, even because not maybe everybody can publish a book, but if they go through and ledger what happens day in and day out, it's something I think that's cathartic for them to go back and look through that and read it and remember what they went through. Because often, once that loved one's has passed, we find that and you may have felt this way too, you're lost because you just spent so much time caring for your mom that you don't know what to do with all that time on your hands now. You've got all this extra time on your hands. You're feeling guilty. And now, how do I fill my day? Because my day before was filled caring for my mom. So, journaling, I think, is a great idea.
It was kind of tough though, because even editing the book I almost felt like crying because it was
I bet.
reliving it.
I
So it was
bet.
hard. And actually, the picture is this moment was my mother and me. I don't know
Uh,
if you can see it. And
I
this
can
is
see
at
it.
this is at my wedding, and that was probably one of the most memorable days of my life. My mother and me got to dance during the mother and son dance,
So
and those
sweet.
and those 3 minutes, Parkinson didn't matter, and it didn't exist, and we just even talking about it's not easy. Those are the moments that can never be taken. And
Right.
I picked that picture because if you do look at it, if you have the book or any
Mm-hmm.
readers, she was like glowing because we were just so happy and laughing and
Aw.
smiling, and that was the moment I'll never forget.
Well, I think what you have shared has been wonderful. I think it's heartwarming what you're doing here. I know that your heart, soul, blood, and entire body is just involved in not wanting to have another person have to go through what you went through or have anyone else go through what your mother went through. So I think we all applaud you for the time that you spend and waking up at 2 a.m. thinking of another great idea as much as you want to stop and take a break. You've now got another list of things you're going to start working on, but that shows your whole body's into it. And you know what? You can't make somebody empathetic or compassionate. You just were born that way. And I'm sure that your mom knows deep down, and even then, how well you took care of her, how much you loved her, and you made an impact on her life when she needed it the most. And she did the same for you.
Thanks. It means the world, but we still have a lot of work to do
Yep.
until we find a cure. And even if the national plan passes, that's not the end because we don't know how it's going to be implemented, who's going to follow it. They had a breakthrough last year at technology. It's called the biomarker from the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And now it's very evasive. It's a large needle you can get in your spine that possibly can determine if you
Oh,
have Parkinson's. And that's important because now you can have early diagnosis, you can have the proper medications, you can avoid misdiagnosis. There's still a lot more work to be done. And we have our own podcast now. We're not a foundation on purpose. I didn't want to be. I wanted to help others, support other foundations. If you
mhm.
go to the site and click donations, you'll see a few incredible organizations like Drive Toward a Cure, Power Over Parkinson's, Michael J. Fox Foundation, American Parkinson's Disease
Wow.
Association, but they were kind enough to create a link from their foundations. It's in memory of my mother. So if someone donates it, none of it comes to us, it goes to them.
Well, I think it's wonderful. And I look forward to having you on again, because I think there's so many things that are going to be coming up the pike here pretty soon, that we'd like to hear about your next book, and then the third book, and all the different things that you have going. So I would like to have you back on so you can just keep us updated on your progress. And we're just super proud of you. And I'm so happy that we could have you on the show today. And we look forward to having you again really soon.
I always leave every show I do or attend with this little quote, if you don't mind.
Do it.
This is for you and your organization and all your listeners. We love you. We support you. We care about you, and you're never alone. I will advocate for you along with Amy. And together our voices are so much stronger. And please go to the website. If you scroll on the first page, you'll see a tree. It looks like a Christmas tree, and it's called the Tree Link, and that's where all my social medias. If you add me, I'll add you right back. But
Oh, good.
I'll be out there fighting until we find a cure, and I send my love and thank you for this opportunity. It means the world to me.
Well, you mean the world to us, and we look forward to having you on again really soon. Thank you for joining us today on Senior Strategies. We hope that you found the tools and the strategies that we offered you beneficial for your journey as a caregiver. We want you to leave today feeling empowered and supported.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for upcoming shows and events. For more information, to schedule a consultation, or to join a support group, please contact us at 561-800-6654.
And remember the strategies
and tools you can use
to make your journey easier.